She walked into the maternity ward wearing scrubs, calm, confident, and smiling. No one questioned her. After all, who would suspect a nurse in a place where life begins? But what the cameras later revealed would shake the entire hospital and haunt every new mother inside it. This woman didn't belong there. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't staff. She wasn't even supposed to be in the building. She was an HOA Karen, a woman obsessed with control, rules, and power, who crossed a line so dark, even security froze when they replayed the footage. Newborns were inches away. Mothers were vulnerable. And every step she took inside that ward was part of a plan no one saw coming. What started as a small rule violation in her neighborhood ended inside a hospital where one mistake could destroy lives. Stay with me, because the first twist hits in seconds and it only gets worse. Backhand index pointing right before the truth came out. Everyone trusted her. Fearful face. Before we dive into this shocking story, I want to pause for just one moment because I want to hear you. Tell me in the comments, which city are you watching this video from? New York? Los Angeles? Chicago? Or maybe a small town no one ever talks about? Backhand index pointing down, drop your city name below. I read every single comment. And if stories that expose hidden dangers, shocking truths, and dark human behavior keep you hooked till the very last second, then make sure you subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications, because the stories we share here aren't just entertainment. They are warnings. Now, let's begin. This isn't just a story about a fake nurse. This is a story about power, obsession, and control, and how one woman's twisted need to enforce rules led her to commit an act so disturbing that even trained security officers struggled to believe what they were watching. Hospitals are supposed to be safe. Maternity wards, especially, are places of hope, protection, and new beginnings. Mothers trust the people in scrubs with their lives and with the lives of their newborn children. But what if that trust is misplaced? What if the person standing beside your hospital bed, smiling, adjusting equipment, was never supposed to be there? Tonight's story will take you inside a quiet American hospital late at night, where one HOA Karen decided she was above the law, above common sense, and above humanity itself. What security cameras captured that night exposed every lie and revealed a truth so chilling, it changed hospital protocol forever. This story unfolds in 6 shocking sections, and I promise you this, each one is darker, each one is more emotional, and each one brings a twist you won't see coming. Let's start at the exact moment everything went wrong. In the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood Ridge, rules weren't just guidelines, they were religion, and no one worshipped them more fiercely than Linda Hawthorne. To her neighbors, Linda was the textbook definition of an HOA Karen. Mid-50s, perfect posture, razor-sharp bob haircut, clipboard, always in hand. She knew every bylaw, every parking regulation, every trash can timing rule, and she enforced them with military precision. A flower pot placed 2 inches off regulation? Violation. Garage door open too long? Warning notice. A baby stroller left on the porch overnight? Fine. Linda didn't smile when she issued citations. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She believed rules didn't need kindness, only obedience. As vice president of the Homeowners Association, Linda had already made enemies on every street. Families whispered her name like a curse. Teenagers crossed the road when they saw her coming. Even grown adults felt a knot in their stomachs when her silver sedan slowed near their driveway. But Linda didn't care. To her, the neighborhood was falling apart, and she was the only one brave enough to save it. What no one knew, what no one even suspected, was that Linda's obsession with control had been growing darker by the day, because rules to Linda were no longer enough. It started after the incident with the Ramirez family. They were new, young couple, first baby on the way. One afternoon, Linda noticed their car parked slightly over the curb line, just barely. She photographed it, documented it, and issued a violation within minutes. The next day, the Ramirezes appealed. They explained calmly. The wife was 8 months pregnant. She had been rushed to a prenatal appointment. They hadn't noticed the curb line. Linda denied the appeal without hesitation. When Mr. Ramirez raised his voice, just slightly, Linda felt something snap inside her. Rules were being questioned. That night, Linda sat alone in her pristine living room, staring at her HOA binder. For the first time in years, the rules didn't feel powerful enough. People were becoming careless, emotional, uncontrolled, and Linda believed she knew why. 2 weeks later, Linda learned that Mrs. Ramirez had gone into labor. The neighborhood buzzed with excitement. Balloons appeared on their mailbox. Neighbors smiled. Someone even parked crooked, without fear, for once. Linda watched from her window, her jaw tight. A baby meant noise, visitors, late-night disruptions, unpredictability, disorder. That same evening, Linda found herself scrolling online, deep into forums about community standards, neighborhood decline, and rule enforcement failures. One post caught her attention. Hospitals let people get away with everything now. No accountability. Linda leaned closer to the screen. Hospitals, places where rules mattered, where order was essential, where mistakes could be fatal. And suddenly an idea formed, quiet at first, then terrifyingly clear. 3 days later, Linda stood inside a medical supply store, holding a pair of light blue scrubs in her hands. She told the clerk they were for volunteering. Her voice didn't shake. Her smile was polite. She bought a badge holder, a clipboard, a disposable mask. At home, she practiced walking with purpose, nodding confidently, holding the clipboard just right. She researched shift changes, staff shortages, blind spots in hospital security, and most chilling of all, she convinced herself she was doing the right thing. Linda wasn't pretending to be a nurse. She believed. She was helping, maintaining standards, protecting order in a place that had grown too lax. Because if people couldn't follow simple HOA rules, what kind of parents would they be? On the night she chose, Linda parked her silver sedan 2 blocks away from St. Catherine's Medical Center. The maternity ward lights glowed softly through the windows. Inside, babies were being born. Mothers were exhausted. Trust was everywhere. Linda adjusted her scrubs, clipped the badge to her chest, blank but official-looking, and took a deep breath. No hesitation, no fear. She walked through the sliding doors like she belonged there, and no one stopped her. At the nurse's station, staff rushed past her. Phones rang. A baby cried somewhere down the hall. Linda blended in perfectly, too perfectly. Security cameras captured her first steps onto the maternity floor at 10:47 p.m. That timestamp would later be replayed hundreds of times, because from that moment on, every rule Linda believed in would be shattered, and the damage she caused would be impossible to undo. And the most terrifying part? This was only the beginning. The maternity floor at St. Catherine's Medical Center followed a rhythm only night shift staff truly understood. Lights were dimmed, but never off. Footsteps were soft, but constant. Machines hummed quietly, keeping newborns alive while exhausted mothers drifted in and out of sleep. It was a place built on trust, and that trust was exactly what Linda Hawthorne walked into. She moved with confidence, slow, deliberate steps, clipboard tucked against her chest. Her eyes scanned the hallway, not with curiosity, but with judgment. To her, the ward wasn't sacred. It was disorganized, a linen cart slightly out of place, a door not fully closed, a nurse laughing too loudly at the station. Violations. Linda stopped near the central desk and pretended to check paperwork. A young nurse glanced up at her badge, but didn't read it. No one ever really did. Scrubs were enough. Confidence was enough. Long night, the nurse said casually. Linda nodded once. Always is. That was it. No questions. No verification. No alarm. Linda had passed the first barrier. As she walked deeper into the ward, Linda began doing what she believed she was there to do, observe. She paused outside rooms, glancing in through the glass. New mothers slept with infants pressed against their chests. Some cried quietly. Some smiled in disbelief. Some stared at the ceiling, overwhelmed. Linda felt no warmth. What she felt was disapproval. One mother had visitors past posted hours. Another had personal items cluttering the bedside. A father slept on the floor, shoes off, blanket from home. Rules existed for a reason, Linda thought, and yet no one enforced them. She scribbled imaginary notes on her clipboard. At room 312, Linda stopped. Inside was Emily Carter, 26 years old, first-time mother. Her delivery had been long and difficult. She was pale, exhausted, barely awake. Her newborn daughter slept in a bassinet beside her. Linda watched for a long moment. Emily's visitor bracelet was loose. Her call button lay tangled in sheets. The bassinet was angled slightly away from protocol position. Linda exhaled sharply. She knocked softly and entered. Emily stirred. "Hi." Her voice was weak. Linda smiled, calm and reassuring, the kind of smile people trusted without thinking. "Nurse on duty. Just doing a quick check." Emily nodded, relieved. "Okay." Linda adjusted the bassinet, then reached toward the monitor, touching buttons she had memorized from online videos. The screen flickered, then steadied. "Everything looks fine," Linda said. "You should rest." "Thank you," Emily whispered, already drifting off. Linda stood there a second longer, watching. Then she left. Security footage would later show her standing still in that room for 37 seconds longer than necessary. At the time, no one noticed. As the night progressed, Linda grew bolder. She corrected a nurse about supply placement, redirected a father back to his room, shut doors that were too open. A senior nurse briefly frowned at her. "I don't think I've seen you before." Linda didn't panic. "Float shift," she replied. "Short-staffed tonight." The nurse sighed. "Aren't we always?" And just like that, suspicion vanished. Linda felt a rush. This was authority. This was control beyond an HOA boardroom. Here, people listened. At 12:13 a.m., Linda made her first mistake. A new mother, Rachel Nguyen, began to panic when Linda entered her room unannounced. Rachel's husband wasn't there. Her baby cried nonstop. "I already had a nurse," Rachel said, gripping the sheets. She said she'd be back. Linda's smile tightened. "I'm just filling in." Rachel frowned. "What's your name?" For the first time that night, Linda felt irritation. Names were personal. Names invited familiarity. Rules didn't require names. "Rest," Linda said, firmly reaching for the baby. Rachel recoiled. "Please don't." At that moment, a real nurse walked past the doorway. Linda stepped back instantly. "Someone will be right with you," she said coolly, and left. Rachel stared after her, heart racing. Something felt wrong. Minutes later, Rachel pressed the call button. "I think someone came in who wasn't my nurse," she told staff. The charge nurse reassured her. "We have floats tonight. Easy to get confused." Rachel nodded, embarrassed. Trust restored. Linda remained invisible. At 1:02 a.m., Linda accessed the nursery hallway. This area required a badge swipe, but the door had been propped open with a cart. Another violation. Inside, infants slept behind glass, monitored by cameras and alarms. Linda stared at them, her expression unreadable. So small, so fragile, so dependent on order. She leaned close to the glass, adjusting a blanket through an access port. An alarm chirped briefly, then stopped. Linda froze. No one came. She smiled. What Linda didn't know was that every movement was being recorded, not just by hallway cameras, but by a newly installed system monitoring badge-free access after midnight. A silent system. One security officer, Mark Delaney, noticed the anomaly on his screen. "No badge scan," he muttered. "Who's that?" He rewound the footage, watched Linda enter the ward, watched her move room to room, watched her access restricted areas without authorization. His stomach tightened. "This isn't right," he said, reaching for his radio. But before he could act, Linda made a decision that would turn suspicion into absolute horror. She turned back toward room 312, toward Emily Carter, toward the sleeping newborn. And the cameras were rolling. The hallway outside room 312 was silent. Too silent. Most nights, the maternity ward never truly slept. There was always a soft cry, a cart rolling, a nurse murmuring reassurance. But at 1:19 a.m., the corridor felt suspended in time. Linda Hawthorne stood outside the door, staring through the narrow glass panel. Inside, Emily Carter slept deeply, her body drained from labor. The newborn lay in the bassinet, chest rising and falling in tiny, perfect breaths. Linda's fingers tightened around her clipboard. This wasn't supposed to be emotional, she told herself. This was about standards, about safety, about correcting what others were too careless to notice. Emily's visitor bracelet was still loose. The baby's ID tag wasn't positioned exactly as shown in the hospital manual Linda had memorized. The bassinet wheels weren't locked. Violations everywhere. Linda pushed the door open. Inside the room, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and baby powder. Machines blinked softly. Linda moved quietly, methodically, like someone performing a task she had rehearsed hundreds of times in her mind. She locked the bassinet wheels, adjusted the blanket, checked the monitor again. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Linda's eyes drifted back to Emily's face. Young, unprepared, vulnerable. Linda felt something stir in her chest, not sympathy, but judgment. Did she even know the rules? Did she understand responsibility? Was she capable of protecting this child? Linda's thoughts spiraled. This was the problem, she believed. People were given things they hadn't earned. Homes, privileges, children. Rules were meant to filter out chaos. And chaos was lying right in front of her. On the security feed, Mark Delaney leaned closer to the monitor. "Why is she back in that room?" he murmured. He checked the staff directory again. No Linda Hawthorne. No badge match. No authorization. He radioed his partner. "I've got a possible, unauthorized individual in maternity. Scrubs, female, mid-50s. I'm heading up." "Copy," came the reply. "Be careful." Mark stood. But before he left the security room, he kept watching. Something about Linda's stillness disturbed him. Back in room 312, Emily stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, just enough to see a figure standing near the bassinet. "Hi," she whispered, confused. "Is something wrong?" Linda turned slowly. Her smile returned instantly, calm, practiced, empty. "Just routine," she said. "Your baby's fine." Emily relaxed slightly, but not fully. Something fell off. Linda hadn't introduced herself. Her voice was too flat. Emily shifted, wincing from pain. Could you call my husband? He stepped out earlier." Linda didn't respond right away. She looked at the baby, then back at Emily. "You should rest," Linda said. "Too much stimulation isn't good." Emily frowned. "I what?" Linda stepped closer to the bassinet. That's when Emily's heart began to race. "Please don't touch her," Emily said, suddenly alert. "I already had her checked." Linda stopped. For a brief moment, her mask cracked. "You're agitated," Linda said quietly. "That's not good for the baby." Emily pressed the call button. Nothing happened. The cord had been disconnected. Emily's breath caught. "Why isn't it working?" Linda followed her gaze. "Oh," she said calmly. "It must have come loose." She didn't fix it. Outside, Mark Delaney reached the elevator. His hand hovered over the button. Then his radio crackled. "Mark, she's still in that room," his partner said. "I don't like this." "Neither do I," Mark replied, stepping inside the elevator. "I'm almost there." Inside room 312, Linda placed one hand on the bassinet rail. Emily's voice trembled. "Please, I don't know who you are." Linda leaned closer, her tone suddenly sharp. "Lower your voice. You'll wake the baby." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "I want a real nurse," she whispered. Linda straightened. "I am maintaining order," she said. "Something you clearly struggle with." Emily froze. That sentence didn't belong in a hospital. Linda reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. An HOA violation notice. She smoothed it out on the counter. Emily stared, confused. "What is that?" "Documentation," Linda said. "People behave better when things are documented." Emily's mind raced. This woman wasn't a nurse. She wasn't staff. She was something else entirely. Emily screamed. The sound cut through the ward. A sharp panic scream. Doors opened. Footsteps echoed. Linda reacted instantly, too fast. She grabbed the bassinet and rolled it backward, positioning it between herself and Emily. "Stop," Linda hissed. "You're being hysterical." Emily tried to sit up, pain shooting through her body. "Help! She's not a nurse." Linda's composure shattered. "You're violating protocol," she snapped. "This behavior is unacceptable." She turned the bassinet slightly, shielding the baby from view. That was the moment Mark Delaney burst into the hallway. "Security," he shouted. Linda's head whipped around. For the first time that night, fear flickered across her face. "Step away from the infant," Mark commanded, entering the room. Linda tightened her grip. "I'm correcting a safety issue," she said. "You're interfering." Mark moved closer. "Ma'am, you are not authorized to be here." Linda laughed, sharp and hollow. "No one ever follows the rules," she said. "Someone has to." Emily screamed again. Mark lunged forward. Linda let go of the bassinet and raised her hands, but her clipboard fell to the floor. Papers scattered. Violation notices, photos of neighbors' houses, printed hospital maps, schedules, research. Mark stared at them. "This is planned," he muttered. Linda's smile returned, slow, unsettling. "Of course it was," she said. By the time nurses flooded the room and restraints were applied, the baby was crying, Emily was shaking uncontrollably, and Linda was still talking, ranting about standards, accountability, and order. Security cameras recorded every word. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Because when investigators reviewed Linda's bag, they found something that proved she never intended to stop at one room. And the truth behind that discovery would horrify everyone who saw it. The room felt smaller once Linda Hawthorne was restrained. Emily Carter clutched her crying newborn to her chest, shaking so violently that two nurses had to steady her. The baby's wails echoed through the ward, a sound that carried fear instead of hunger. Linda, meanwhile, sat upright on the edge of the bed, wrists secured, spine straight, chin lifted. She looked offended, not ashamed, not frightened, offended. Mark Delaney bent down and picked up the fallen clipboard. He flipped through the papers slowly, his jaw tightening with every page. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't mental wandering. This was planning. Printed floor maps of the maternity ward, marked with handwritten notes. Shift change schedules highlighted in yellow. Room numbers circled in red. And next to each room number names. Mothers' names. Emily's was first. "Clear the room," the charge nurse ordered quietly. As staff escorted Emily away, Linda craned her neck to watch. "She's unstable," Linda said loudly. "I was trying to help." No one answered her. Mark gestured to another officer. "Bag. Now." Linda's silver tote sat neatly by the wall, organized, zipped, intentional. When Mark opened it, the ward went silent. Inside were extra scrubs, folded, a second fake badge, medical gloves, and used disinfectant wipes. Then something worse. A printed checklist, not hospital-issued, personal. Each line began with the same words. Correct improper behavior. Underneath were bullet points. Identify non-compliant parents, reduce external interference, reposition infant, if necessary, document emotional instability. Mark swallowed hard. She was planning multiple interactions, he said under his breath. The charge nurse whispered, "My God, how many rooms?" Mark looked back at the papers. "At least 6. Linda noticed the change in their faces. She smiled. "You see," she said, "I came prepared, unlike most people." Mark turned to her. "You're not staff. You impersonated a nurse. You endangered patients." Linda scoffed. "Endangered? I followed procedures better than half your employees." "That baby," a nurse began, "was improperly supervised," Linda snapped. "Mother hysterical. Father absent. Environment cluttered. High risk." Emily's screams echoed faintly from down the hall. Linda didn't flinch. Hospital administration arrived within minutes. Then police. As Linda was escorted through the ward, staff and patients stared in disbelief. Some cried. Some whispered. Some held their babies tighter. Linda walked proudly. At the elevator, she turned to Mark. You should thank me, she said. I exposed weaknesses in your system. The doors closed. But the story didn't end there. Not even close. 2 hours later, in a sterile conference room, detectives replayed the security footage frame by frame. Linda entering the hospital. Linda passing the nurse's station. Linda standing too long in rooms. Then the nursery footage. One detective paused the screen. Zoom in, he said. They watched Linda's hand through the access port, adjusting a blanket. But that wasn't all. Rewind 10 seconds. This time, they saw it clearly. Linda wasn't just fixing a blanket. She was testing the alarm system. Pressing, waiting, listening, seeing how long it took for anyone to react. How long before someone noticed? The detective asked. Mark checked the timestamp. 48 seconds. Silence filled the room. That's too long, someone whispered. When detectives searched Linda's home later that morning, the findings escalated the case from disturbing to horrifying. Her spare bedroom had been converted into what could only be described as a command center. Shelves of binders, HOA records, neighborhood photos, complaint logs. But mixed among them were hospital-related files. Different hospitals, different cities. Articles about maternity ward security breaches. Case studies on infant abductions. Printed, highlighted, annotated. One binder was labeled simply, Failures. Inside were newspaper clippings, hospitals that let things slip, parents who weren't vigilant, staff who looked the other way. Linda had written notes in the margins. Could have been prevented. Too emotional. No structure. Detectives exchanged looks. She's been escalating, one said, and if she hadn't been stopped tonight, another asked. No one answered. Meanwhile, Emily Carter sat in a private recovery room, wrapped in blankets, surrounded by nurses and her husband, who had rushed back in tears. I knew something was wrong, Emily sobbed. She didn't feel human. Doctors confirmed the baby was physically unharmed. Emotionally, they couldn't say the same. Emily refused to sleep. She jumped at every sound. She asked for staff names repeatedly. Trust was shattered. By morning, the story leaked. Fake nurse arrested in maternity ward. HOA official impersonates medical staff. But the headlines missed the most terrifying detail. Because when police interviewed Linda again, she said something that chilled even seasoned detectives. I wasn't finished, she told them calmly. I was still observing. What were you going to do next? A detective asked. Linda tilted her head. Escalate, she replied. Hospital officials soon realized something worse. Linda hadn't accessed just one ward. She had mapped emergency exits, camera blind spots, and visitor protocols. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a test run. And the question no one could shake was simple and horrifying. If security hadn't noticed that one missing badge scan, how far would Linda Hawthorne have gone? Because in her mind, rules justified everything. And the next section of this story would reveal the truth about why maternity wards terrified her so deeply, and what event from her past pushed her obsession beyond control and into something far more dangerous. Interrogation room B was cold, quiet, and deliberately uncomfortable. Linda Hawthorne sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, back straight, eyes forward. She looked less like a criminal and more like someone waiting for a meeting to begin. The detective across from her slid a folder onto the table. Linda, he said calmly, we've gone through your home. Your records. Your searches. Linda didn't react. We want to understand why, he continued. Why a maternity ward? That's when Linda finally moved. She smiled, small, controlled, almost polite. You won't like the answer, she said. Try us. Linda leaned back slightly, eyes drifting to the blank wall behind the detective. I was a mother once, she said. The room seemed to tighten. 27 years earlier. Linda was not always the woman neighbors feared. She had once been Laura Hawthorne. Younger, softer, invisible. She had lived in a modest apartment in a different state. No HOA, no authority, no rules enforced. And she had been pregnant. According to hospital records, Laura arrived at Riverside Community Hospital in labor late one night. Short-staffed, overcrowded, chaotic. She had trusted the system. She had trusted the nurses. She had trusted that someone was in control. They weren't. Linda's voice never shook as she spoke, but her fingers tightened with each word. They forgot to lock the bassinet wheels, she said. They left the room, door open. They ignored my call button. The detective listened, silently. My son rolled. Linda continued. Just inches. Enough. Hospital records confirmed it. A newborn injury. Severe complications. A rushed response. Too late. The baby survived for 4 days. Then died. Medical staff called it an accident. Linda called it negligence. No one was punished, she said flatly. They apologized. They cried. They said these things happen. Her eyes hardened. Rules exist to prevent these things. Linda sued. The case was settled quietly. No admission of fault. No policy changes. No names held accountable. Linda lost more than a child that year. She lost trust. After that, her life narrowed. She quit her job. She cut off friends. She moved again and again. Everywhere she went, she noticed the same thing. People ignored rules. Institutions cut corners. Authority was lazy. And children paid the price. That's when I realized, Linda said softly in the interrogation room, that systems don't fix themselves. The detective frowned. So you joined an HOA? Linda smiled wider. It was a start. At first, it was a start. Rules gave her structure. Enforcement gave her purpose. Penalties gave her control. For the first time since her son died, Linda felt powerful. But power has a way of expanding. When the Ramirez woman got pregnant, Linda continued, I saw it. Saw what? The detective asked. Complacency. Linda replied instantly. Neighbors excusing disorder because of emotions. Pregnancy, to Linda, wasn't sacred. It was dangerous. Uncontrolled people making irreversible mistakes. Just like the hospital had. The detective flipped through the folder. Your research, he said. You studied infant abductions. Security failures. You practiced. Linda didn't deny it. I wanted to see if things had improved, she said. They hadn't. So you decided to intervene? Yes. That's not intervention, the detective snapped. That's criminal impersonation and child endangerment. Linda's eyes flashed. No, she said sharply. That's accountability. Psychiatrists later described Linda's condition as a control-based trauma fixation. To Linda, rules weren't guidelines. They were morality, and anyone who broke them, especially parents, was a threat. When asked why she returned to Emily Carter's room, Linda answered without hesitation. She reminded me of myself, she said. The detective froze. Exhausted, overwhelmed, unaware of risks. So you wanted to protect the baby? Linda tilted her head. I wanted to assess whether she deserved responsibility. The words landed like a blow. News of Linda's past spread quickly once unsealed court documents surfaced. Public sympathy tried to creep in. She lost a child. She was failed by the system. But that sympathy died the moment experts weighed in. Because grief does not justify terror. Trauma does not excuse obsession. And pain does not grant authority over others' lives. Emily Carter watched the press conference from her hospital bed. She listened as reporters mentioned Linda's lost child. Her hands shook. She looked at my daughter like an object, Emily whispered. Like a test. Emily would later be diagnosed with acute postpartum anxiety. She refused to let nurses out of her sight. She checked ID badges repeatedly. She slept with the bassinet pressed against her bed. Linda hadn't touched her baby physically, but she had marked her. In custody, Linda remained calm. She refused a plea deal. I did nothing wrong, she insisted. I exposed vulnerabilities. And, in a way, she was right, because after her arrest, hospitals across the state conducted emergency reviews. Security was tightened, badge systems updated, nursery access redesigned, all because one woman proved how fragile trust really was. But the most chilling revelation came during Linda's final evaluation. When asked if she regretted anything, she paused. Yes, she said. The room held its breath. I regret being interrupted. And, in that moment, everyone realized something terrifying. Linda Hawthorne didn't see herself as a villain. She saw herself as necessary. And the final section of this story would reveal how the court responded and the chilling message Linda left behind that forced an entire nation to rethink what safety really means. The courtroom was packed, not with curiosity seekers, but with parents, mothers holding infants close to their chests, fathers standing with arms crossed, jaws tight, nurses in plain clothes, hospital administrators, security experts. Everyone understood one thing. This case wasn't just about Linda Hawthorne. It was about how close the unthinkable had come. Linda entered the courtroom in a gray suit, hair perfectly styled, posture flawless. She didn't look like someone accused of impersonating medical staff and endangering newborns. She looked like someone prepared to defend a policy. As she took her seat, her eyes scanned the room, not with fear, but evaluation. The prosecution didn't waste time. They played the footage. Security cameras showed Linda walking confidently into the maternity ward, standing too long in rooms, disconnecting a call button, blocking a mother's view of her child. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Emily Carter couldn't watch. She buried her face in her husband's shoulder, hands trembling. When the video ended, the silence was unbearable. The prosecutor stood. This defendant didn't break rules impulsively, she said. She studied, planned, and executed a deliberate infiltration of a maternity ward. She lifted the checklist. She didn't see babies as human beings. She saw them as compliance tests. Linda didn't flinch. The defense tried a different angle. They spoke of grief, of trauma, of a mother who lost a child and never healed. For a moment, the courtroom softened, until the prosecutor responded. Grief does not grant authority, she said firmly, and trauma does not excuse terrorizing vulnerable mothers. She turned toward Linda. This wasn't protection, she said. It was control. When it was Linda's turn to speak, she stood slowly. I did what no one else was willing to do, she said calmly. I identified weaknesses. The judge interrupted. You endangered lives. Linda shook her head. I revealed negligence. Murmurs filled the room. Linda looked directly at the jury. If your systems were strong, she said, I wouldn't have gotten in. That sentence would later appear in headlines nationwide. The verdict came after 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Impersonation of medical staff, criminal trespass, child endangerment, aggravated emotional harm. Linda was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment. As the judge read the sentence, Linda finally reacted, not with tears, with disappointment. Outside the courthouse, Emily Carter spoke to reporters for the first and only time. I trusted that place with my child, she said quietly, and one person broke that trust forever. She paused, but if there's anything good that came from this, it's that hospitals changed. She was right. Within months, hospitals across the country implemented sweeping reforms. Multi-layer badge authentication, biometric nursery access, tamper-proof call buttons, mandatory verbal ID confirmation in maternity wards. Training protocols were rewritten. Security budgets increased, all because one woman proved how fragile safety truly was. Linda Hawthorne disappeared into the system, but she left something behind. A letter. It was written from her holding cell and addressed to those in charge. The court sealed it until a judge ruled it could be released as a public warning. It contained only one paragraph. If I could do it with no medical training and a clipboard, imagine who else can. Fix your systems. People like me will always exist. That letter spread like wildfire. Years later, Mark Delaney still works hospital security. He trains new officers personally. I tell them this, he says. Threats don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they look organized. Emily Carter eventually found peace, but not without scars. She still checks badges, still double locks doors, still wakes at night to make sure her daughter is breathing. Trust, once broken, never fully returns. And Linda? Psychiatrists continue to evaluate her. She shows no remorse, only belief. Belief that she was right. Belief that Order matters more than humanity. Belief that rules justify everything. This story isn't just about a fake nurse. It's about how authority can be mimicked, how trust can be exploited, and how danger often walks in wearing confidence, not chaos. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Would you have noticed her? If this story shocked you, disturbed you, or made you rethink the meaning of safety, then don't just watch and move on. Subscribe to this channel for stories that expose hidden dangers before they happen. Like this video, so more people see the warning. And most importantly, comment below, round pushpin, which city are you watching from? Because awareness starts with conversation. And the next story might be closer to home than you think.